Pluto is a very primordial object. It's been out in a deep freeze. You can think of it as a storage area, your attic.
Pluto was once a planet and it's about to become a planet once again. After several years of not being regarded as a planet, scientists and astrologers have fought for Pluto, a dwarf planet in the Kuiper Belt, to be reinstated as a planet. What caused Pluto to be removed from the list of planets in the first place, and why is it being reinstated after almost 2 decades? Have scientists discovered life forms on Pluto? Join us as we explore why Pluto could finally become a planet again. Our understanding of the final frontier changed on August 24, 2006, when scientists and researchers at the International Astronomical Union voted to reconsider Pluto's planetary status. This was a decision that changed Pluto from being a planet to a dwarf planet. Members of the public were outraged and textbooks had to be rewritten. To this day, it's a relegation that was hugely seen as a demotion and continues to have reverberations in the world of science. Today, the debate about Pluto exposes the difficulties in defining a planet. The International Astronomical Union explains a planet as a celestial body moving around the Sun with a nearly spherical appearance. It's also a celestial body that has, for the most part, cleared debris from its orbital neighborhood, although this set of metrics is not universally agreed upon. Other planets like Jupiter and even Earth have not cleared several asteroids from their orbital regions, even with their large size. Still, there are small worlds that are circular and that also orbit the Sun, but guess what? They are not considered planets. One such planet is Ceres. However, Pluto's surprising demotion from planetary status caused bigger problems because it became tough to explain any objects in the solar system or even in space at the time. It shows that science cannot sometimes slot objects into easy categories. Because if the definition of a planet once again widens, it's unclear how to assess the numerous non-circular objects that orbit our Sun. This change may even put the asteroid belt into question, referring to the huge band of small objects between Mars and Jupiter. Even though the Pluto debate took place almost 2 decades ago, a lot of people are still not aware of the reason why Pluto was knocked from its position in the list of planets. What we didn't know was the solar system's change from 9 planets to 8 had been in the process for a long time. It also helped to summarize one of the greatest strengths of science, the ability to change seemingly steadfast definitions after finding new evidence. However, a new study published in the journal Icarus has declared that the International Astronomical Union's definition of a planet was based on astrology, which is a type of folklore and not science. This means there was no concrete ground for Pluto to be removed from its planetary position. The authors noted in the study that the IAU's definition has now been rejected distinctly by several planetary scientists due to 4 reasons. One of these reasons is that the resolution represents to the public that taxonomy can be decided by voting, which undermines their understanding of the scientific process and could also compromise their trust in scientific endeavors. The research also added in the study that Pluto must be classified as a planet under the definition put in use by scientists since the 16th century, which states that planets are geologically active bodies in space. Philip Metzger, the study's lead author and a planetary physicist at the University of Central Florida, said that there are probably more than 150 planets in our solar system. And another feat that pushed for the cause of Pluto being a planet again was NASA's New Horizons probe, which flew by it in 2015. The space probe made some amazing revelations, reviving the debate about Pluto's status as a planetary position in the solar system. This was when researchers began their scientific argument, saying that the IAU's explanation contradicted the century-long definition of a planet. The IAU, on the other hand, came up with a new definition of a planet in 2006 because by then, objects similar to Pluto such as Eris and Makemake had been found. According to Metzger's words in the report, he said that most planetary scientists disregard the IAU's definition of a planet because it's an astrological concept. He also said that they will keep regarding the likes of Pluto, Titan, and Triton as planets. He said, basically, we're ignoring the IAU. Dr. Alan Stern, a planetary scientist who leads NASA's New Horizons mission, once also said in a statement that the IAU's use of a vote made science appear to be political and arbitrary, and that undermined trust in science itself. Stern continued to explain the situation, saying that the IAU's definition was formed by non-experts or astronomers who study galaxies, stars, and black holes. In fact, he thinks that the term defining a planet is poorly worded and that the IAU mishandled it. He made this clear when he noted that the solar system is heavily characterized by asteroids, that no celestial body has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit, and that Pluto easily qualifies as a planet. And not only Pluto, but other dwarf planets as well. For years, Stern has said that the IAU's decision was unscientific and that it was formed mainly to keep the number of official planets at a manageable number. Other people, like the former NASA chief Jim Bridenstine, were also in defense of Pluto. Jim said that in his view, Pluto is a planet, and one can write that the NASA administrator declared Pluto a planet. He reiterated that Pluto was a planet and he stuck to it. This was the way he learned it, and he is committed to it. Still, what caused planets to lose their meaning, and how did it happen? The word planet stretches back to antiquity. It was derived from the Greek word planetes, which means wandering star. The 5 classical planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, are visible to the naked eye and can be seen shifting in strange pathways across the sky compared to more distant background stars. Then, when telescopes came into the picture, astronomers discovered more planets, namely Uranus and Neptune, which are too faint to spot with the naked eye. Note that this definition of planet follows the Greco-Roman tradition on which the International Astronomical Union, or IAU's community definitions are based. The names of planets vary by culture, and the naked eye planets were observed around the world during antiquity. When astronomers found Ceres, which is now considered a dwarf planet, it was categorized as a planet among scientific communities at the time. But that changed as more measurements showed Ceres was smaller than other planets ever seen at the time. Eventually, Ceres was lumped into a group of rocky bodies called asteroids, of which we now know of hundreds of thousands in the asteroid belt alone. Pluto was found and classified as a planet in 1930 when astronomer Clyde Tombaugh of the Lowell Observatory in Arizona was checking photographic plates of the sky on different nights. As he checked them, he saw a tiny dot that drifted back and forth against the backdrop of stars. Immediately, the solar system's newest candidate was considered an oddball, however. It was so far from the circular that it actually got closer to the Sun than Neptune for 20 of its 248 years-long trip. It also is tilted to the ecliptic, which is the plane upon which the other solar system planets orbit. And in 1992, scientists discovered the first Kuiper Belt object, 1992 QB1, a tiny body orbiting out in Pluto's vicinity and beyond the orbit of Neptune. After this discovery, more objects were found as well, which eventually revealed a belt of small frozen worlds similar to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. Pluto remained the king of this region, but in July 2005, astronomers and scientists discovered Eris, a distant body which was initially thought to be even bigger than Pluto. And it was at this point of Eris's discovery scientists and researchers had to ask themselves questions because they were getting confused. If Pluto was a planet, then did that mean Eris was one as well? What about all those other icy objects out in the Kuiper Belt or the smaller objects in the asteroid belt? Where exactly was the cutoff line for classifying a body as a planet? A word that had seemed straightforward and simple was suddenly shown to be oddly slippery. An intense debate followed, with a lot of proposals for a planet's definition being offered. Every time we think some of us are reaching a consensus, then somebody says something to show very clearly that we're not, said Brian Marsden, a member of the IAU Executive Committee in charge of coming up with a new meaning for the word planet. A year later, astronomers were no closer to a resolution, and the dilemma hung like a dark cloud over the IAU General Assembly meeting in 2006. At the conference, researchers endured 8 days of contentious arguments, with 4 different proposals being offered. One controversial suggestion would have brought the total number of planets in the solar system to 12, including Ceres, the largest asteroid, and Pluto's moon Charon. But the suggestion was a complete mess, said astronomer Mike Brown of Caltech, the man who discovered Eris. When the Prague conference was about to end, the 424 astronomers who remained voted to form 3 new categories for objects in the solar system. From that moment on, only the worlds Mercury through Neptune were considered planets. Pluto and its kin were regarded as dwarf planets, and other objects orbiting the Sun were called small solar system bodies. A dwarf planet, as defined by the International Astronomical Union, is a celestial body in direct orbit of the Sun. It is big enough that its shape is controlled by gravitational forces rather than mechanical forces and is ellipsoid in shape. And there are also 3 criteria that the IAU uses to assess an object before calling the object in space a full-sized planet. To begin with, the object has to be in orbit around the Sun, it needs to have enough mass to assume a nearly round shape, and it must have cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Unfortunately, Pluto could only meet the first 2 criteria and didn't meet the third. In all of the billions of years Pluto has lived there, it has not managed to clear its neighborhood. Now you might be wondering what that means, not clearing its neighborhood region of other objects. Sounds like a minesweeper in space. However, it means that the planet has become gravitationally dominant. There are no other bodies of comparable size other than its own satellites or those otherwise under its gravitational influence in its region in space. As a result, any large body that does not meet these criteria was classed as a dwarf planet, and that included Pluto, which shares its orbital neighborhood with Kuiper Belt objects such as the Plutinos. And although the group of experts did not take this decision lightly, I'm embarrassed for astronomy. Alan Stern, the leader of NASA's New Horizons mission, which flew past Pluto in 2015, said in a statement. He added further that less than 5% of the world's 10,000 astronomers took part in the vote. New Horizons was a major turning point in the planet debate, as its flyby mission around Pluto showed astronomers a world that is far more dynamic than anyone envisaged. Large mountains, battered craters, and signs of liquid flowing upon its surface all point to a world that underwent massive geological change since its creation. On this basis alone, people like Stern have said Pluto should be regarded as a planet since it's a dynamic region, a place that is not so static that only micrometeorites disturb its surface. And the views of Pluto's moon, Charon, also shows a very dynamic place, including a red cap on its pole that seems to change its looks with the slow seasonal change far out in the solar system. Also, Pluto has several moons, while 2 established planets, Mercury and Venus, do not. Several asteroids and dwarf planets also have moons, which makes the definition of a planet more complicated. Such views are shared by many in the public. In 2014, before the flyby, experts at the Harvard and Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics in Cambridge, Massachusetts, gave different definitions of a planet. Science historian Owen Gingrich, who chaired the IAU's Planet Definition Committee, asserted that planet is a culturally defined word that changes over time. But the audience watching the CFA debate overwhelmingly chose a different participant's definition, one that would have brought Pluto back into the planetary fold. Alternative classification schemes continue to pop up. A 2017 proposal defined a planet as a round object in space that's smaller than a star. This would have made Pluto a planet again, but it would do the same to the Earth's moon as well as many other moons in the solar system and bring the total number of officially recognized planets up to 110. A year later, Stern, along with planetary scientist David Grinspoon, wrote an opinion article in the Washington Post. Their article argued that the International Astronomical Union's definition was hastily drawn and flawed, and that astronomers should review their ideas. Such pleas have not been responded to so far, and it looks unlikely that the IAU will revisit the controversy anytime soon. Astrophysicist Ethan Siegel responded to Stern and Grinspoon in Forbes by writing, "The simple fact is that Pluto was misclassified when it was first discovered. It was never on the same footing as the other 8 worlds." Mike Brown also chimed in, "So hey, Pluto is still not a planet, actually never was. We just misunderstood it for 50 years. Now we know better. Nostalgia for Pluto is really not a very good planet argument, but that's basically all there is. Now let's get on with reality." Brown wrote on Twitter, where he's embraced his role in the redefinition with the handle @PlutoKiller. Even kids these days ask why the definition even matters. But astronomers have said that it's no easy answer. We may have to look beyond our solar system in considering what makes a planet and what does not. Over 5,000 exoplanets or planets outside our solar system have been found to date, and they are showing a huge set of worlds. from super-Earths between the size of Earth and Uranus to hot Jupiters orbiting close to suns to a range of other planetary sizes. The types of planetary environments to consider are changing rapidly. What this proliferation of planet-forming options explains is that each solar system may be its own special environment. While we can say more generally that stars can form planets from collapsing gas and dust in their environment, the individual dynamics that control planet formation are far more complicated. For example, are there multiple stars involved? How much dust is available? Is there a black hole or a supernova blowing the valuable dust and gas away that planets need to grow? And even if planets are lucky enough to grow up, how they are connected with other planets early in their formation is poorly understood. As worlds interact with each other, their mutual gravities appear to shift planets closer and further from their parent star, or in some cases, to fling worlds out of the solar system altogether. What this all shows is that our definition of a planet may have to become more situational to account for the number of scenarios in which a world may form. Perhaps planets may be tied to particular formation circumstances or particular zones. All that seems to be known for sure is that as we collect data, planethood and the debate that Pluto has engendered will continue to be debated for quite some time yet. But from current information about Pluto, is its content fit enough for it to be called a planet, and would humans be able to live there? Well, we don't think so. Pluto's surface is still covered in glaciers, which have been doing so for billions of years. Pluto now joins Earth, Mars, and a few other moons in having glaciers that are now flowing. Several glaciers often stream down from mountains, with pits into the basin to the east of Sputnik Planitia, and carve down valleys as they go. The source of ice in the glaciers is thought to be seasonal and megaseasonal cycles of nitrogen ice that sublimate from ice to vapor, drift around the dwarf planet, and then freeze again on the surface. However, these glaciers are not like the water ice glaciers we have on Earth. Because liquid nitrogen is less thick than solid nitrogen, any melt within them will float to the top rather than descend toward the glacier's surface. It's even possible that some of the liquid nitrogen may even erupt as jets or geysers as it emerges on top of the glacier. In addition, however, some of Pluto's surface is made of water ice, which has a somewhat lower density than nitrogen ice. Some of those water ice rocks will rise up through the glacier and float like icebergs as Pluto's glaciers sculpt the surface. Sputnik Planitia, the largest glacier known to exist on Pluto, measures more than 1,000 kilometers across, or roughly the size of Texas and Oklahoma put together. These icebergs can be seen in multiple images taken by New Horizons of Sputnik Planitia. And while Pluto's surface was explored, another thing was discovered. Pluto's atmosphere is slowly disappearing. A recent study suggests that the gases surrounding Pluto are now dissipating and turning back into ice as the dwarf planet moves farther from the sun. Holding on to your atmosphere as a celestial body isn't always easy, just ask Mars, and the new study suggests that this is happening right now. With only a trace amount of methane and carbon monoxide, Pluto's atmosphere, which is already on the thin side, is primarily composed of nitrogen. The atmosphere appears to be fading as a result of nitrogen freezing up once more as surface temperatures plummet. Utilizing occultation, which involves utilizing a far-off star as a backlight for telescopes on Earth to observe Pluto, the judgment was made. It is a tried-and-true observation method that is frequently employed in astronomy. According to planetary scientist Elliot Young of the Southwest Research Institute, Swirly in Texas, scientists have been using occultations to track changes in Pluto's atmosphere since 1988. Small changes in temperature cause large changes in the bulk density of Pluto's atmosphere, which is formed from the evaporated ice on the surface. The dwarf planet currently completes one circle of the Sun in 248 Earth years, traveling as close to the Sun as 30 astronomical units (AUs), or 30 times the distance between the Earth and the Sun at one point. However, when that distance widens, Pluto will receive less sunlight and experience colder temperatures. The increase in atmospheric density seen in 2015 is probably the result of thermal inertia or leftover heat trapped in the nitrogen glaciers that have a delayed response to the enlarging distance between Pluto and the Sun. This can be compared to how the Sun on Earth warms beach sand. High noon is when the sun is at its brightest, but the sand continues to absorb heat throughout the afternoon, making late afternoon the hottest time of day. Now, Pluto may no longer be considered a planet, a point of considerable debate among specialists, but astronomers continue to be very interested in it as a planetary entity. We are always learning new things about this far-off rock. Interestingly, the planet may appear brighter in the sky if its atmosphere eventually freezes and falls because it would reflect more sunlight. However, something that will bring joy to the hundreds of millions of Pluto lovers around the globe, the International Astronomical Union, IAU, the body that's responsible for naming and classifying objects in the cosmos, has just announced that Pluto has been reclassified as a major planet. That's right, the little dwarf will be rejoining the ranks of Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Planet X, the planet that will surely spell doom for all humanity. As we talked about earlier, in 2006, the IAU made their infamous vote deciding to demote everyone's favorite planet to a dwarf planet. It didn't meet the criteria needed to be a full-sized planet. But immediately after this 2006 announcement, the public exploded with outrage. There was a number of campaigns launched that were aimed at ensuring that Pluto was reinstated as a planet. These met with no success. But all of that just changed. After years of deliberation, the IAU announced in a press release that they have reclassified the icy world. They upgraded Pluto back to its proper standing as a planet. We simply underestimated the public's attachment to Pluto. We realized our error shortly after the decision came down to demote it, said Dr. Amy Joggi, professor at the Institute of Planetary Studies and head of the IAU's Planetary Classification and Experimental Nomenclature Task Force. We didn't think anyone would really care if a little clump of ice and rock on the outskirts of the solar system was reclassified. Today we take steps to correct this most grievous of errors. In addition to Pluto's reclassification, Dr. Joggi has also proposed that the IAU create a new category of planets called a hyperplanet. These hyperplanets, according to Dr. Joggi, are like regular planets, but at least 2 times as awesome. It has also been proposed that Pluto be made an honorary member of this new planetary class. In all honesty, we feel bad for the way we treated Pluto and, more importantly, all those that cared about it so greatly. The public showed us our error. Well, hopefully the new class of planets will be created without a hitch and Pluto will be added as the first member. It's only fair. What do you think? Let us know in the comments section below.